Welcome to the Cheer Athlete. If I asked you why someone can't squat, would you say that it's because their quads are tight, their ankles are tight, or their hips are tight? Or maybe, like I do, would you ask a different question and say, what is the body trying to tell us when we are looking at a squat pattern? A squat pattern is when you go from standing down to a squat position, like a sit to stand. We can look at that in a variety of different ways. But the basic motion is we're lowering our hips down and we're getting down low. Now, in a movement screen, I'm going to look and see where is their full motion. Can they actually get their butt down to the ground? If somebody is squatting for an exercise, I'm not going to have them do that. We're going to change that up. But we want to see, do they have the actual motion? And a movement like a squat requires a lot of moving pieces. It's not just pass fail, like they can't squat. Maybe they need to look and see, how does the movement feel? Is it good or bad? How does it feel in their body? Where are they compensating? We're going to get information from how they're moving. And every single movement pattern is going to tell a story. We want to look and see, can we read how someone is moving and interpret what is going on in that story of movement, and then take that into what is missing and what needs more work, or what is going too much and contributing to other symptoms. I have a client who we just finished actually, and he is a runner and he came in with plantar fasciitis and back pain. He came in and had been looking on the web and what do I do for plantar fasciitis, and does all the treatments, get your calf stretched out, get your foot stretched out, loosen up the calf, and just keep that moving better. But he wasn't having any relief. When we looked at him move, it actually wasn't his foot that's the problem. We looked at him bending forward to touch his toes. We looked at him leaning backwards. We looked at him standing on one leg. And we looked at him rotating and twisting and going into a squat. And putting all those pieces together, we can then see what is actually limiting the motion. So looking at how he moves in all those different patterns, not just one, tells us more information and tells us the whole story. So I'm not just focusing on the diagnosis, plantar fasciitis and back pain. We're looking at how we influence movement and how that movement can actually influence how you feel. So some different questions that I ask when somebody comes into the clinic and we're getting through an evaluation. How does the movement happen? When someone bends forward to touch their toes, do they actually hinge at their hips or do they just dump into their upper back? If somebody's going to squat, are they leading with their knees or do they actually sit back and initiate that well? What happens to their breathing as they're doing all of these movement patterns? If they're holding their breath, are they effectively doing the movement? I'm going to say no. And if you cue them to breathe better and to try and use their breath as they move, do they actually move better and move easier? Going to look also, do they brace? If they're guarded, if their foot's hurting, they may not, if they're asking them to go into single leg stance, they may not want to shift their weight onto that leg. And so they're going to brace and protect, and then that throws all the mechanics of the chain off. If I ask somebody to walk on their heels, which is one way to see if it's coming from the ankle or the hip in the back. If they can't walk on their heels and they're protecting and guarding and they're bending their knees, then that tells me, okay, there's not good motion in their ankles, which might be affecting their single leg stance, or it might be affecting their toe touch, or it might be affecting their squat. And I want to see, do they have a normal, good weight shift? If it's hurting, they're going to shift away from it and not lean into that. Same may happen if they are going to touch their toes. If they're not shifting their weight back and keeping even distribution on their toes and their heels, then that's going to put a different pull on the rest of the body and will affect all the mechanics. So after we look at where does that movement begin, then we're going to look and see what should be moving. What is the actual, what are we expecting from the movement? And what didn't happen when they went to do this. In a squat, are we looking to see, does the knee go over their toes and how far? Is it too much? Or is it more through their hip? And are they just kind of falling into it? Is it more through their upper back? So if somebody is leaning backwards, do they lead with their hips or do they lead with their upper back? Looking at the whole motion for any of these movements. And what does the foot do and what does the rib cage do? And so breaking those different pieces down, where are they initiating and are they getting enough movement if it's supposed to be moving? Then we're going to look and see maybe where does the body compensate? Where does the body steal motion so that it can achieve the movement that we're looking to get? Quite often people will shift. Quite often people will bend their knees if they're either leaning backwards or leaning forward to touch their toes. In a squat, maybe their knees are caving in. All of this is just useful information. It doesn't necessarily mean it's good or bad. It just means it gives us where is the limitation and what needs a little bit more focus. And then the big one, can they control the motion? Quite frequently, there's a lot of people, and kids especially, can fall into a squat with their heels down, but they are really lean forward and they are more kyphotic through their upper back. If I ask them to crawl, for instance, maybe their back is arching and they don't have that solid, still trunk that we want to see, which is what we need when we are locomoting. We don't create a lot of wiggle. We don't let your back hyper arch. We want to see that it's controlled. That, yes, as you're moving your arms and legs, you are getting some rotation and it's not just still, but there shouldn't be a lot of wiggle. So if they can't own the position and do it solidly and they're holding their breath, it's again meaning that they're not owning the position, then is that quality movement. So if they can get there, but they can't control the motion and they don't have that solid motor control, then we're going to say, okay, not quite normal and maybe some dysfunction. So like we're looking at back extension. We're going to see what's compensating. Quite often the hips aren't going to move forward. The lower back might arch too much, or maybe it doesn't arch enough. Saw somebody today, they couldn't move their hips at all. They thought they went backwards, but they didn't do anything. Quite often I see the head's going to compensate, and that will tell me, okay, and now I need to look at the neck to help me with the lower back. In rotation, I worked with a 9-year-old who had some knee pain, and as he rotates, bending. Now, we should be able to rotate with our knees relatively straight, and the feet should pronate or supinate depending on which way you're rotating, and your knee should rotate with that. But if the knee is rotating too much, that's a compensation, and I'm not going to give him a normal, even though he's like, oh yeah, I can totally do this, it's totally easy. Something's compensating down the chain. When we look at single leg stance, is another big compensator. Not just looking at balance. And this client that I set free today, whose foot pain has resolved and he's back to running, and he's like, I need to work on my balance. I need to work on just standing. But balance isn't just standing and staying in place. Balance is how your body can control movement and how we can move in and out of movement with relatively little wiggle. It's okay that there's a little wiggle because we're creating motion there, but the degree of that is what makes it dysfunctional. So if someone's foot is rolling back and forth, I'm probably not going to give them a solid functional motion. But if their knee is bending or they are not shifting their weight and getting onto that leg, I'm also not going to give them dysfunction. Even if they can stand there rock solid for 30 seconds and they feel like I'm so solid, I have great balance. But if they're looking off, it's not necessarily a normal motion, and we may need to look further into that. Squat is a big compensator. Quite often I see the knees go in, the trunk lean forward, their head come way forward. I check a squat initially with the arms up overhead to see, can I do it in a fully extended spine and getting the trunk and the shins to be parallel. If they can't, if I see their arms come way down, they might have the motion to be able to get into that squat, but maybe they need to look at their upper back and their core control as opposed to looking at their ankles. So all these little pieces will come together and we can help to break that down depending on what the movement pattern is. And looking at multiple movements, not just one, can help as well. I really like the single leg stance and the half kneeling because that tells me a difference between where the foot and the hip are in line and can they balance that down on one knee and take the foot out of the equation. That gives me a lot of information, seeing is the hip stable, are they able to maintain a level pelvis, and if not, okay, there's our starting point. So remember, perfect movement is not the goal, but quality movement is. If we're having pain with movement or we are struggling with a movement, we need to then see what can we do to improve that. We're going to see what's missing, and we're going to maybe introduce exercises and movements that can help to reintroduce what's missing and understand why movement is happening this way. If you are changing how you are observing the movement and not just saying, oh, my flyer can't get underneath a stunt because she can't squat down. And then you're just trying to get her to squat lower and get in under the stunt and really bend your knees more and pull it up. But maybe she doesn't have the ankle mobility to do that, or maybe she doesn't have the core strength to do that. If you're observing her and watching her move without it being loaded, you can find out what does she need, and then she can work on that outside of practice and get back into practice. When she goes into stunt, maybe she's doing a corrective on the ground to loosen things up and get her ready and get back up into doing whatever stunt she's going to go do. So change how you're observing the movement. Don't just look at the one joint. Don't just look at the one motion and think that's all you need to do. You can change how you look at that movement. You can change how you coach. And then you'll change how you're treating and what exercises you're giving. And then you can also change how you train and working on the things that matter to help make things move better. We talked about this. I've said this before. Compensation isn't bad. Compensation is information. We don't want to compensate all over the place. If it's a bad compensation, we may need to modify and regress an exercise. But that confirmation is information, and that tells us what we need to do to make an exercise better so that they can relearn the pattern and get up and do it more functionally. Next week, we're going to start breaking down these movement patterns one at a time. We'll begin with a movement that almost everyone overlooks, but that may tell us the most about how the entire body functions. So stay tuned. We'll get more into that next week. I hope you're finding value in these and learning a little bit more about motion. I hope you're starting to observe how people are moving, looking at the squat, watching somebody walk, watch how somebody picks up something off the floor, watch what a push-up looks like, and just see, is it looking solid? And maybe what do we need to do to keep that moving forward by modifying and then progressing it. If you want to start to track how you're moving, I have a free movement tracker that will be in the show notes below. And if you want to create better movement and have a workout program that helps you to keep moving forward and keep getting stronger, gives you more individualized feedback, that's in the Move Better app. Check that out in the show notes below. And I hope you have a great week. Don't forget, when in doubt, breathe out. Take life one step at a time. You can do anything you put your mind to. And as my friend Drew Kelleher said, you're responsible for your own vibes. So go get the day.